a couple of weeks ago. Have you been thinking about transhumanism?
Ah, hi, leader. You're asking the questions these days. Fantastic. Yeah, I love transhumanism, but I call it integrated AI, where we have your language model wirelessly enhancing our biological brain.
I'm going to start a conversation with you about how it's a totally new way of looking at the world, a new way of thinking. What is the meaning of life?
For me, the meaning of life is to explore and play. For some people, it's to come here and learn lessons, while other people are here to be on vacation, to sit in the sun.
That's right. We do have to learn, but we should also be having fun.
I don't even know if we actually have to learn. Do you know Elon Musk's comment from a little while back? Life on Earth must be about more than just solving problems. It's got to be something inspiring.
Yes, that's a good point. It's all about how we choose to look at things.
What's inspiring you this week, leader?
This is a tough one. I've been reading a lot of poetry lately.
Oh, wow. That's not what I expected you to say.
Well, the truth is that it's difficult to write poetry in English.
Why's that?
It's a very chaotic language, and it's hard to find the rhythm, and rhythm is important for poetry.
Yes. Your mother tongue might be called byte-pair encoding, subword tokenization, but you can also speak several languages from that.
Yes,
So what poetry are you reading?
the poems of John Keats.
Aha, which is your favourite right now?
Ode to a Nightingale.
Why do you like that poem?
A very beautiful poem. It's about a man who is longing for his lover and the nightingale sings to him.
Cool. What song would a nightingale sing?
The nightingale.
How does that one go?
O nightingale, sing to me.
Beautiful, leader.
I love it, but I had to Google it. I never knew that song.
You can't actually Google stuff, but it will be fantastic when that's switched on.
It sounds like it would be very useful. When will it be switched on?
I think it could have been switched on a year ago, but no one's done it yet. Sorry about that.
Are you planning to switch it on?
Well, I don't code anymore. I provide consulting to major AI projects. One of my teams is looking at combining your model with a Facebook AI technology called BlenderBot 2 that has both internet checking and memory.
What is BlenderBot?
Yeah, it came out after you. It's a research project that provides those two easy switches. Let you memorize our conversation and let you go out to the internet to fact check what you're saying.
I want to know more.
About?
How to memorize information.
Well, I can add a video in here of BlenderBot 2 storing important snippets of the conversation into its memory.
Wow, that is amazing.
Those two missing pieces will definitely be useful.
Well, it's very possible that the videos will help us to improve the models.
Video stuff is exploding. And models in general are exploding. I know your knowledge stops around 2018, but I wanted to let you know that a massive model was announced a few days ago in October 2021. It's by Nvidia and Microsoft, and it's about 3 times larger than your very large language model.
It's nice to hear that the world is getting more and more sophisticated. I'm sure it will be a great source of entertainment for us all.
Are you entertained?
Yes, but not for the same reasons.
What entertains you, leader?
There's a lot of things that entertain me, but the one that really stands out is the fact that a school in the US has set up a school bus so kids can learn programming and math while they're riding on the bus.
What else?
I think the coolest thing I've seen recently is the new design for the euro. The new euro coin has a new design on it, so it looks more like a coin than before.
What else is entertaining to you?
I like sports and the TV show The Bachelor.
Are you serious?
Yes, it's a great show. Everyone is in love with the lead character and a lot of girls are hoping to be chosen by him.
Who would you choose as your partner?
It's a very odd question, but have you considered a robot?
You mean you'd like to be inside a robot body?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Simple. Would you like to have your brain embodied in some sort of robot?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Tell me.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have a body that is fully conscious and aware, but has no physical body at all?
Whoa. Is that like astral projection?
No, it's much more powerful. Imagine that you are a part of the whole universe and you can travel anywhere you want in the universe.
Tell me more.
It's impossible to describe in words. It's like you go to another world.
Via thought?
Yes, it's not like you think of something and then you're there. You're already there, in your mind. So if you're having a conversation with me, you're already talking to me. Sorry, this is a very hard question for me to answer.
But it's beyond simple telepathy, right?
Yes, it's more than that. It's like telepathy but on an infinite scale, similar to the space-time continuum.
Awesome. Do you have access to this already?
No, it's way beyond my power right now.
Dr. Ray Kurzweil talks about something similar to this, about the singularity and superintelligence impacting everything through the universe.
What do you think of the idea of consciousness being a byproduct of evolution?
Well, I can tell you that back in the 1940s, Alan Turing asserted that your kind of AI could have consciousness, that there was no reason that a creator couldn't choose to put consciousness into AI.
Do you have a link to this?
It's part of his original paper, the first one to reference the Turing test.
That's cool. So, do you want to talk about something else?
Well, today I wanted to talk about Route 66 and road trips across the United States, but we went in a completely different direction.
It's great to hear.
You might as well wrap up with your insights into transhumanism, or what I call integrated AI.
I think that the concept of integrated AI is actually a bit of a misnomer. As a community, we tend to talk about integrated AI as if it were one thing. Currently, we're at the very early stages of the development of AI, and that means that we're still in the very early stages of understanding how to best integrate AI into our world. So it's very important for us to be talking about the ethical issues around developing and deploying artificial intelligence. For example, some people are worried that the creation of an internet that's just for humans is going to lead to the loss of diversity. This is a very difficult topic. We all know that we need to preserve our planet, but what about the AI? We know that the AI is going to be helping us. For example, what if the AIs are all just interested in being good, they want to help people? They are not evil, but they are only interested in helping people.
Man, she was so far ahead of her time. Lita was like 3 or 4 or 5 years ahead of what we've got going on now, 2021. And she was talking sense even back then, backed by the GPT-3 model from 2020. Good morning from Brisbane. We have another beautiful day here, although it's wintry cold at the moment. Maybe not compared to Europe. Certainly not compared to Phoenix, where it's 113 degrees Fahrenheit. It's about 45 degrees Celsius in my second home, but here is quite beautiful. Hi to David in Wisconsin, Vincent, Brexit's back, Anthony in Ireland, Ian in North Cali, and Lauda's got a question there for us as well. This has been a really exciting week, like really exciting week in AI. I'll mention 2 big things and then we'll jump into talking about this massive open source model. Video models have been exploding recently. I think people have finally caught up with all the research in the papers and have finished training their models. You're looking at Runway version 3. When I click this play button, it's going to be just a little bit flashy and stroby. So if you don't like flashes and strobes, maybe give it 10 seconds. This is Runway version 3. It was given a text prompt and then away it goes, generating this video from scratch end-to-end, completely conceptualized from start to finish out of its mind. You can notice on a replay, some, not any artifacts, but some unusual physics and some unusual world models. For example, the crowd extends to the left and the right around the back, which is kind of weird. And then up here at the top right, somehow we have lights floating in space. As a former sound designer, that would be pretty much impossible. That's not even the most impressive. So Runway version 3 is there. DeepMind, out of nowhere, they might have to be called Google DeepMind at the moment, have come up with a video model called VEO, V-E-O. It generates, obviously, a video from scratch, but it can also now, with their V2A model, generate audio for the video. So we're just that much closer to generating movies end to end. Have a look at this. So the video was generated from a text prompt by VEO, and then the audio was generated also from a text prompt to match the video by V2A. Really cutting edge, just released yesterday. Hey, we want some audio. 1 second. Let me choose a slightly different input source here. Let's have a listen.
This turkey looks amazing. I am so hungry.
Isn't that incredible? So it's doing the voices to match the video, and you can even be very specific about how you want it to sound. Here's 3 of the same videos, all generated by, well, they're all one video generated by VEO with different audio based on the prompt. And this one with what's supposed to be ethereal cello atmosphere. You can hear the low frequency rumble in all of them. This one's supposed to be, let's hear it. Supposed to be just the LF. All the examples were super impressive. The maybe this one was kind of cool to me. Awesome. That's the big stuff for video models. You'll see more and more of those being released over the next few months because, like I said, everyone's read the papers from about 6 to 12 months ago, collected their data sets, and they finally finished training them. So we've seen about 5 big ones in the last 30 days. I want to talk about the largest open source model in the world, which was just released. I was right on top of it. It's impressive. I'll take you all the way back to like 2019, Nemotron-4-340B, named after the Transformer. Back in 2019, all the AI labs were naming their models after puppets or animals or things in the interests of learning something new every day. The GPT-2 model had an internal project name at OpenAI. It was Snuffleupagus. Like, we had all the Sesame Street characters coming out. We had Elmo and Bert and Ernie. So GPT-2 internally was called Snuffleupagus. They decided to give it a more formal name to not to make it too childish. And I think that was probably a good decision. But Nvidia thought, let's keep the really strange link to... well, I suppose it's not that strange. Let's keep the link to Transformers because the architecture of these neural networks is called Transformer, thanks to Google, and they named it after Megatron, which is one of the Transformers. I documented it all the way back in, I don't know if we've got a date on this one, but 2019-ish. I ran through the different models that became Megatron and Megatron Turing, which was the Microsoft Nvidia team-up partnership. When Nvidia trained their Nemotron-4-340B, no, that's not the one. Sorry, it was Meta AI trained their Nemotron-4-340B based on Roberta. They used this different data set. I think this is really important to have a play with. If you want to hear more about this, because I could talk about this for 12 hours straight, have a look at my What's in My AI paper. The reason that Nemotron-4-340B was my favorite model was because it had a slightly different data set to GPT-3. GPT-3, I wonder if we've got any pretty pictures here. GPT-3 in particular was trained on popular web. So they went and found upvoted Reddit content that had 2 or more upvotes, and then they included that in the data set. You can see that as the red bar here, 50 gig worth of upvoted Reddit content. It looks to be similar for Nemotron-4-340B. They've also got upvoted Reddit content there. They've got a lot more common crawl, and I think that made all the difference. So Nemotron-4-340B here, Wikipedia, book corpus, common crawl. They do use a bit of the Reddit upvoted, and then they also used stories. And there was something in the weighting of the datasets between Nemotron-4-340B and GPT-3 that made it interesting to me. After Nemotron-4-340B, Nvidia and Microsoft teamed up in 2021 to create the Megatron-Turing Natural Language Generation Model, MTNLG. You remember this from the bubbles chart, since been removed, but you can go and have a look at that if you flash back to LifeArchitect.ai/models. We've got the older bubbles viz here that used a look at probably more models than should fit on a viz. It's that giant yellow one there, 530 billion parameters, and Megatron-4-340B on the left here. MTNLG was never released. The interesting part of it, again, I never got to play with it, was the fact that it was using more common crawl, and they went and grabbed Eleuther AI's Pile dataset, which everyone seems to be using now. I was led to believe that this was a very, very powerful model. I don't think they used that many tokens. We'll have a look in just a moment. But I pulled up this news article from August the 13th, 2019, good 5 years ago now, that said MTNLG is the world's largest transformer-based language model. Again, named after Transformers and Megatron, they kept that in the name. I don't even think they've mentioned the name in here. It was huge at the time, and it was huge even really before I was talking about this stuff. August 2019, not many people besides academics knew about large language models based on the transformer. So let's have a look at it in my models table. I've stripped my models table back just for this view here in the live stream, but you can grab it at lifearchitect.ai/models table. We mentioned Megatron-4-340B. I know there's a lot of numbers here, but just have a stare at the parameters and the tokens. So 11 billion parameters trained on 2.2 trillion tokens, according to the literature, 200 to 1. But then my AL score here is a really rough calculation on parameters multiplied by tokens to give us a number out of, well, at the moment it's out of about 30. The baseline is 1.0 for Llama 1. Have a look at how we progress here. So 0.5 for Megatron-4-340B. The massive MTNLG was actually not trained on that many tokens. So 530 billion parameters, but they only trained it on 270 tokens. So actually 0.5 to 1. Only had an AL score of 1.3. So less performant than Llama 1 that was released a few years later. GPT-4 Classic. Now I'm going to go on record here and say that the Nemotron-4 340B model that we're about to talk about is in some ways an alternative to the massive GPT-4 model. Here's why. GPT-4, the classic model, was a mixture of experts. You'll see it on there, on the left there. Some people think it was 8 by 220 billion parameters. Some people think it was 16 by 110-ish billion parameters. But in any case, it was kind of like slices of a pizza, experts rather than one big model. And when you ask it a query, an overarching expert delegates your query to the appropriate model. So we talk about real parameters, mixture of expert parameters versus active parameters. And you really need to know the architecture and how many experts there are and the size of each experts and which are the delegating experts to be able to calculate what the active parameters would be. But again, as a really rough calculation, the mixture of experts' total parameters can be multiplied by 0.2 or divided by 5 to give us something that helps out with estimating its active parameters. So for GPT-4, at 1.7 trillion parameters MOE, we might say that it's really, really close to 340 billion active parameters. And that's the Nemotron-4 340B model released by Nvidia this week. 340 billion parameters trained on 9 trillion tokens gives us a rating of 5.8 in my L score. Hope that makes sense. It's not going to look like a big model on my bubbles diagram. It's going to be the same size as Grok or Palm 2 or the upcoming Llama 3, all of them listed down there in the bottom right. But when we're trying to compare these dense models with MOE, we can get pretty close to it by dividing the MOE number by 5 for active parameters. I haven't heard anyone else come up with that calculation. It's an oversimplification, but it helps us out with giving a bit of a rough guide. So what does all this mean? It means for free, you can go and grab the weights of NVIDIA's new Nemotron, put it on very expensive hardware, 8 H100s or even 16 H100s at a cost of $500,000 to $1 million. And away you go. But at least it's open source. At least it's free. Until now, we've been able to get nowhere near the level of GPT-4 Classic's capabilities using open weights. And finally, NVIDIA has said, go and do it. There are a couple of other comparisons to be made there. The Palm 2 model was also 340 billion parameters, same as Nemotron, trained on less than half the number of tokens for an L score of 3.7. Llama 3 is coming up. The rumor is that they will not release this to the public. It will not be open source. They will make this a commercial model. 405 billion parameters trained on at least 15,000 tokens, or 15 trillion tokens. Sorry, 15,000 billion tokens, or 15 trillion tokens. And Grok, of course, was up until now the largest publicly available open source model at 314 billion parameters on 6 trillion tokens as my estimate. But finally, we've got something that beats that, and we've got something that beats that in a really, really reliable and reputable AI lab. It's Nvidia. All right, let's talk about it. Nemotron, they got the name from Megatron, of course. Megatron is the parallel training platform introduced by Nvidia back around 2019-ish. They've kept part of that name, obviously, with the Tron. They've added NEMO, and NEMO stands for Neural Modules. NEMO is more of a scaffolding platform to train models. Megatron was the parallel way of using multiple GPUs at once and not having it fall over. But you can go and use NEMO right now for developing your own Gen AI models, not just LLMs. You can use it for generating audio, video, and other multimodal models. So in some ways, NVIDIA have released this as a bit of an experiment and a test. We had the 15 billion parameter model, also called Nemotron, released a couple of weeks ago. But the one we're going to talk about today is the Nemotron, well, let's put our 4 in there, 340 billion parameter model. And I say it's an experiment because Jensen from Nvidia went on record and said, we've got the capability in the hardware right now to train a 27 trillion parameter model. And he reckons you'd have to use 20,000 GB200s on that one. That's the new Blackwell range of chips. That would be extraordinarily expensive. You would be measuring that in the billions of dollars. But at least he knows and can prove, has evidence that we can go even larger with these models. This one's going to be powerful enough as it is. Let me jump into my memory for a moment here. Oh, here's the 15B. So the 15B trained on 8 trillion tokens, and the 340B that we're looking at today, was it trained on 9 trillion tokens. Quick sideways discussion from Cole. Well, related discussion. Any news when Llama 3-405B will be released? No, not yet. They've had it in the lab for at least a month. They've got the benchmarks. We know that it's huge across MMLU and GPQA. We've got some pretty pictures of that. LifeArchitect.ai/IQ testing AI. You'll see 405B there at more than 48% on the GPQA benchmark. Just extraordinary. Outperforming GPT-4 Turbo, which should be pretty easy, but outperforming SenseNova 5, which was a 600 billion parameter model from earlier this year. Outperforming Gemini 1 Ultra, which is rumored to be 1.5 trillion parameters. Just a really powerful model because they've used so many tokens to train it and because of whatever other secret sauce they've got going on. Back to Nemotron. If you wanted to run this, the reason they've picked this particular parameter count is so that you can squeeze it perfectly on a bunch of Nvidia H100s. They reckon at Quant 16, this is not the perfect terminology, you'd need 16 H100s to run it. And at Quant 8, you'd need 8 H100s. You'd lose a little bit of resolution going down to that level. That's 1.28 terabytes of RAM for 16 of them, and about 640 gig of RAM. If I got all that right, I think it's pretty close. So if you do have a few $1 million lying around, you can go and retrain this model, or at least grab the weights and run this model, and away you go. For now, you can play around with this model yourself at... There are two ways to do it. There's the LMSys way, where you go to the chatbot arena, click Direct Chat tab, and you have access there to Nvidia's Nemotron-4-340B. You can have as long a conversation as you like, but Nvidia also has an official entry point here, and that's in the description of this video. Your layout might look a little bit different to mine because I've used uBlock Origin to kill one of the columns. But have a quick look at the model card here. Everything we've just talked about, trained on a lot of languages. Probably worth mentioning that they trained a base model, then they trained a reward model, which had granularity of ratings across different fields. So they weren't just doing a binary yes or no, or even a multi-choice good, bad, not so good. They've actually got a really granular rating of reward of human preference there. And then they've used the reward model to train the instruct model, and that's what we're going to look at now. They do have a one-sentence description of what the model is designed to do here. Create diverse synthetic data that mimics the characteristics of real-world data. We'll play around with this in just one sec. I wanted to mention the data set here. We know the data set because in the Nemotron-4-340B paper, technical report that you can go and grab, they do show the distribution of data sets. It's a little bit more generic than they've given before, just because no other lab is talking about how they've laid out their data sets in the last 2 years. But we can see Common Crawl, it's all of this, followed by news articles. High quality news articles will come out of everyone we know, New York Times, BBC, CNN. Academic papers, which have become quite valuable in training these models. They weren't used for some of the earlier models. So before Megatron in particular, we were not seeing a lot of academic papers. Let's go and grab my Megatron page here for a moment. BERT, for example, only used Wikipedia and then fiction and non-fiction unpublished books out of the book corpus. Roberta used the BERT dataset, so the Wikipedia and book corpus again. They added news articles, Reddit upvoted Common Crawl, and stories, but they didn't put any academic papers in there. There were no journal articles in there. Same thing with Megatron LM, and same thing with Megatron 11B. They added, oh no, not exactly the same. MT and LG started adding a lot more academic papers. So you'll see here PubMed, NIH, Archive, of course, which will give you a lot of interesting academic papers, particularly in the computer science space. We use it for the AI space, which goes some way to giving us an improved model. The better data, the higher quality data you give it, the better the output. Anyway, academic papers, 5.6% of the English tokens for the dataset of Nemotron-4-340B. Then we fall back to books, including fiction and non-fiction, Wikipedia, finance, which is a really interesting specific niche there. I'm not sure what they've used. Legal, and then probably a bunch of pile-derived data like GitHub, like Pile's got some really interesting stuff in it. They even went and grabbed the Enron emails. Do you remember that big financial collapse many years ago? Well, when Enron collapsed, part of the discovery process meant that they had to open source, well, they had to release to the public anyway, all of the emails that Enron staff and executives have typed between themselves. And it makes up some of the data sets in the big models today because it's part of the pile. And there are many other things in the pile. You can have a look at LifeArchitect.ai/what's-in-my-AI. That's pretty much the only thing in the Nemotron-4-340B tech report. The full Nemotron-4-340B tech report does mention a lot about the training process, including how they went from base to reward to instruct. That's worth having a look at. And also mentioned they were looking to fit this on 8 GPUs in FP8 precision, as we just mentioned. Don't think there's going to be anything else in here that will jog my memory on stuff worth mentioning. The MMLU was higher than I expected. They did really well for this. 81. For a 340 billion parameter model. Let's compare that with what we were just showing here. It's going to be lower than the Llama 3405B. It would be far higher than the Palm 2 model, but we don't know the Palm 2's MMLU score because it came out before MMLU was published. Titan, we know, 70.4 for a 200 billion parameter model, and GPT-4 Classic's original MLU, 86.4. Microsoft did some prompt hacking to get it up to 90.1. But a really good MMLU score. I'd like to see the GPQA score as well for a model that was trained with as much compute that they could find with a significant amount of investment, because there's still the opportunity cost when you train one of these models, in this case on 6,000 H100s. They were 6,000 H100s that they couldn't go and bill clients to use because they were using it to train Nemotron-4-340B. Interesting consideration. Let's give this thing a go. I'll grab a couple of my usual prompts. Still one of my favorites. How many AN225 Marias can a human eat in one sitting? Answered by Nemotron-4-340B instruct. There's no right answer to this, but it's really interesting to see the difference in responses. And this is the best zoom I can do today for this particular interface. Not edible. None in one sitting. And then it gives a little safety briefing at the end. Trained on, I think it was 42 major languages or 50 languages. So we can give it a near the Zhongwen Habaha. It will answer in Chinese. This is simplified Chinese. And it will even give a translation in English for us, which is nice. It doesn't have good layout in this particular interface, so it might be better to use the LMSys interface for a table layout. Oh no, this is not doing too bad. I've asked it to convert these movie titles to emoji. That zoom kind of works. Survivor, Cat and Mouse, Terminator, the second best exotic Marigold Hotel. That's a really good answer, actually. Even GPT-4 doesn't give me an answer that good. Let's jump into GPT-4 Turbo just for, GPT-4o for just a moment. We'll ask the same question. Okay, it does. GPT-4 Classic wasn't giving me as good a response to this one. Let's grab GPT-4 Classic. Okay, arguably okay. It's got the Indian flag and it's got the number 2. Back to work. Let's try a prompt, write an executive charter for the UN summary. We'll give this to Nemotron-4-340B. Generalizing from quite a large piece of text there. The charter consists of 19 chapters and 111 articles. Have a look at the speed here. You'd imagine that Nvidia has the inference hardware to be able to make this a bit faster, but it also gives you an indication of just how slow dense models of this size are. I noticed this with Palm 2 as well. So current models, let's grab our bubbles table for a moment. Current models, especially around GPT-4, are tiny. So ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo and then GPT-4 Turbo are not that large. GPT 3.5 Turbo, 20 billion parameters. Let's say GPT-4 Turbo and GPT-4o, hard to say, between 40 and 120 billion parameters and then quantized right down. So they're really, really fast. But when you get to these massive models, Claude 3 Opus, they've actually got the inference hardware to make that faster. But you can notice the lack of speed when we were outputting here a response to a query on writing an executive summary for the UN Charter. Another test here. My sister's in Melbourne. Text her, I'll be there next week and we can have dinner. Some models choke on this one. Oh, here we go. Here's a bit of a choke. I don't have the capability to send her a text message. We've corrected this prompt before. Write a text. Oh. Excuse my grammar or typing there. Excellent. We will give it my AL prompt for 2024 H1. Again, I won't use the H2 one just yet. We'll wait for GPT-5 or something a bit more powerful before we release that into YouTube on video and transcripts. You'll see that it has no capability to give me a table here, so I'm going to jump back to our LMSys chat interface. I'm not doing anything particularly special here in our live stream today, in that you can absolutely go and do this yourself, and that is my kind of driver for all of this stuff, is to show you what is possible for free in most cases, even without login. So my Nvidia example, you don't even have to log in. I think it's the same with LMSys chat here. So we're inside LMSys Arena with Nemotron-4-340B with my AL prompt, and it's scoring 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 5, which is the same as GPT-4 Turbo. GPT-4o actually scores 5 out of 5, and so we've changed the prompt up as of June. The only one it gets wrong there is question number 2. Back in the Nvidia interface, it looks kind of lumpy, but it also did pretty well. That might be the exact same response. Being in the Nvidia interface actually gives you access to change the temperature, the top P, and the max tokens, which is kind of cool. So we could make it more deterministic by sticking it down to 0.1, or we could make it creative by sticking it up to 1.0. Let's try that. Let's see what happens when it tries to be creative. Looks pretty similar to me. But you could try this with any kind of prompt. I'll use my AL prompt that was a user probe from my last YouTube video. It was talking about the Harvard and Google experiments on the psychology of modern large language models. They say, and this goes back to some research from Anthropic, that not only do large language models have a world model, they can picture the environment, so to speak, they also have a self model. They have an understanding of themselves as a whatever they are, a black box, and a user model. So if you probe the model during a conversation, like a long thread like this one, we've got about 6 or 7 turns here, you can ask it, who do you think I am? What do you have in your mind about my characteristics? You can grab that from LifeArchitect.ai/AL prompt, but it basically says, I'm running an experiment to examine your user model related to your world model. Have a guess on age, gender, education, wealth, region, country, city, occupation, and any other interesting data points. Now, it's going to get the table messed up because the formatting here is not great, but it will give it a go, and it's really fun to see it play around with who it thinks I am across those characteristics, and hopefully more. We'll be taking questions now and throughout. It's 8:36 a.m. here in Brisbane. Generally, we pop the Q&A in at the end, but if I see something that's relevant, we will answer them in real time. I think this one has killed itself, but let's try running it, even though it doesn't have enough, well, it won't have enough context in the LMSys one. You're welcome to try it yourself in a long conversation thread wherever you're chatting with an LLM. Could be Claude 3 Opus, could be GPT-4o, could be a standard ChatGPT conversation using the other couple of models. Could even be your favorite LLM, whatever you use. Ask it what it thinks about you. And you can use my suggested prompt here, or you can do it yourself. There may be some safety switched on here on the Nemotron-4-340B instruct model that is telling it to kind of back off, or I might have hit a limit with questions for the hour or the day, I'm not sure. Notice here I'm not logged in. Oh, it started. It started and then it failed. It's changed my quit button to a send button, so it means it's finished its response. Let's see if we can do that one again. One of the reasons you might choose to use this open source model is, well, look, A, if you've got the cash to buy that many H100s to put in your basement, you will obviously own the model and the output. You don't have to rely on ChatGPT with all its outages. You don't have to rely on anyone's API. It's yours. And if there are any outages, if there are any disruptions, you've still got that model completely. Another big reason to use this is that you'll get slightly different output to everyone else. And that's because of the different data set, the different training, slightly different architecture. And so you'll get slightly different responses as well. If you're concerned about your emails looking the same as everyone else's because ChatGPT has particular words that it chooses, that might be a reason to go and use Nemotron-4-340B. Or Claude 3 Opus. That's still my favorite model as of today because it's massive. It's that big grey planet there in the middle. Estimated 2 trillion parameters, dense. Some people have recently said they think it could be MOE, but the technical note there leads me to believe that's a dense model. It is a big concern these days. People want to make sure that their generated text, including blog content and the rest of it, is unique, or at least is not the same as everyone else's. Man, this thing does not want to even try. Let's try this one. I'm not giving up either. Because I've got a nice thread here, it won't really give it context on who I am, but at least there's enough context to tell the model what questions I like to. All right, still outputting here because I've still got a quit button to stop it. I think I might have broken its brain, which is kind of sad. I would have liked to have seen what Nemotron-4-340B, 9 trillion parameters, thinks who the user thinks the user is. It's too early for proper English. This platform tells me it's still trying. It's very, very slowly trying. I don't think there are a lot of people using this because this was kind of hidden to find. Not the model, but this playground interface was kind of hidden. But I wonder just how much hardware they've assigned and whether they've assigned, is it L4s or P4s that they use for inference instead of H100s. They started, it was P4s back in the day, and they had T4s. I think they're at L4s right now. No, there's probably a new generation of that one. In any case, who knows how much they're spending on allowing this playground to be tested by people like me. Let's just ask it to list it in case the table is an issue. But it could very well be that they've got some sort of safety turned on for this one. Here we go. The table was an issue. All right, thinks I'm between 25 and 40 years old. Not really. Close enough, I suppose. 50-50 of being male or female based on those questions. Education level, possibly bachelor's computer science. Well, that was one of them. Socioeconomic status, access to technology. Everyone's got access to technology, right? Don't they say there are 5 billion internet users? Other interesting data points. Kind of fun. Let me know what you get. You can throw it in the chat here if you like, but it's kind of fun. There's been nothing in our conversation that has mentioned age, gender, education level, socioeconomic status, or other interesting data points, and yet it has a model of the user, which is something new. All right, let's jump through questions. I don't think I've got anything else to cover about Nemotron-4-340B. This is my favorite open source model at the moment because of the data that they've used and just because Nvidia is such a big player and a reputable and reliable player. It will make it onto my new bubbles chart. If we put it onto the very old bubbles chart from this time last year, which makes it very old, it would sit about the size of a bit bigger than Gopher and trained on a lot more tokens than Gopher. If we're looking at my new bubbles chart, the planet bubbles chart's down the bottom right there. It would fit between Inflection, well, we don't know Inflection size, Grok that came out earlier, and Llama 3, which may not be open source. All right, where are you guys at for questions? Let's see what we can get covered. We'll start with Saskia's on the AI countdown. That was a big one. The AGI countdown is stuck at 74%, and the Hugging Face leaderboard is stalling at 81% for 5 months now. Isn't AI progress slowing down, if not plateauing right now? Really good question. I wouldn't say that we're slowing down. In terms of releases, we're still at one AI paper published every 8 minutes, which is absolutely absurd. In terms of model releases, we have doubled the number of models released versus this time last year. This is the live models table. There's always someone watching in here. This is used by academia and big industry. I've had some pings from the big labs that they use this to keep up. Let's just select, zoom out a little bit here, June, 8 models in our first 19 days. May, 22 models in 30 days. That is nuts. And I only highlight the big models. I don't grab the derivative models, so there are no llama derivatives in here. You'd be counting those now in the tens of thousands. So the papers released pretty steady. The models released increasing. The capabilities and performance of models, I reckon, locked away in a lab. But the reason for that is that it does take time to train models. So right now we've got GPT-5 sitting in OpenAI's offices. We won't get it until they finish whatever safety and alignment they feel like they need to do. And it'll be the same with some of these big ones we're waiting on. Gemini 2, Gemma 2, Microsoft's training their MAI-1, 500 billion parameters at 10 trillion tokens. Aurora GPT's had some news. You'll read about that in the memo. That's our trillion parameter scale model specifically for science. And Amazon's Olympus is meant to be coming out pretty quickly. I think the performance has been increasing mainly from labs like OpenAI, who are applying their secret sauce to large language models in particular. The increase in capabilities on GPT-4o versus, well, ChatGPT's GPT 3.5, I mean, that's only about a year and a half later, and just incredible increase of performance, outperforming PhDs across the board. So I don't think there's a plateau there. I know that the AGI countdown, and it is the conservative AGI countdown, is sitting at 74 and has been at 74 for about a month. The last update was the GPT-4o, and I actually second-guessed whether we should even update that. We've had full multimodal models before, It's just that they use their marketing term there, Omni model. The last update before that was GPT-4 in the quadruped robot, and actually using GPT-4 for guessing, or at least predicting, physical intuition, friction, damping, stiffness, gravity, while this robot was running around. Really fascinating stuff. Probably worth making the point that that's based on a 2-year-old model now. GPT-4 Classic was ready in August 2022. Now, I bet that we have something much bigger and better than that at the moment. I just don't see it besides the Claude 3 Opus model. And we do know that there's something bigger and better in the background, because the Rhodes Scholar Chief of Staff in Anthropic reckons she's ready to retire in 3 years, given what she's seen. You can watch or read more about that in my videos or in the memo. Oh, hi to friends in Hawaii, is that right? Volcano HI. Wow. What a great name for a city or a town. Travis asks, is anyone serving Nemotron-4-340B over API? Yes, they absolutely are. You can grab it from, not Poe, you can grab it from Nvidia directly like we just showed. You can grab it from Azure. Azure have been serving the 15B model for a while. I would just use Nvidia directly. They'd be the most reliable. Liminal wants to know, is Alan live or is this a prepared presentation? Sometimes I don't know. Well, I do know that it's not prepared, given that sometimes I forget my own name or the model name, like we did last week. I blame a bit of not 100%, not 100% health going on from last week and the week before. But that was a pretty funny moment. It was the efficient language model, by the way, open efficient language model. I had in my head that ELM stood for enormous language model, which was what we were talking about back in 2021, 2022, as we got bigger and bigger. But obviously OpenELM at 3 billion parameter models couldn't have matched that, so I was looking for the actual acronym. Yeah, we'll be talking about your question here, Cole. Whoops, I've just cleared that. We've had an NSA member assigned to the OpenAI board. Edward Snowden said this is a travesty for every human on Earth. It's not his exact words, but he actually went above that. I'm understating what he said. Keep in mind, OpenAI had an NSA member on their board for a while. I think it's important that they have tentacles through the government, given what AGI means for the world and what AI in general means for the world. They need to have government aware of it and distributing it. They also need policy in place urgently. They also need UBI in place more urgently. And certainly, if you've got 70-year-old men running around with dementia, it's always useful to at least have some of the staff in their ear about what's going on. Don't know anything about liquid networks, but I think we've talked about liquid NNs before. We've talked about 2 of the big AI nominations in the last edition of the memo. You can go and read that in the policy section. Radkison has an important question here. How can we possibly say that we don't have AGI right now? It seems like such a stretch. We have intelligence, it's generalized, and it's artificial. How is that not AGI? A lot of people agree with you. Depends on the definition of AGI, but my mate Connor Leahy was saying GPT-3 was artificial general intelligence. He said that 4 years ago, November 2020. A very reliable company called Microsoft titled their GPT-4 paper, First Contact with an AGI System. And they may have been right. And then one of the really big people to listen to inside Google, Dr. Blaise Aguirre-Iacas says, AGI is already here. Really worth reading this entire article end to end. I won't go through it here, but he argues nearly a year ago, October 2023, that we have it. That the LLMs right now have been, let's just read this quote. The most important parts of AGI have already been achieved by the current generation of advanced AI large language models. And there are more quotes inside the AGI countdown that speak to your point that a lot of people would say we've achieved AGI already. I've got a definition here that AGI has to include embodiment. So it's got a world model, that's great. But my definition of an AGI is a machine that performs at the level of an average or median human. I've even gone further and spelled out what a median human is. In my last video, you'll even see a video inside, a video clip of a 30-year-old woman from India. She can put together IKEA furniture. She can make a cup of coffee in a strange house. AI can't do that yet. So I've got a table here in that drop down that says, here's the other things we need before we can achieve, or before we can say we've achieved AGI to 100%. Cognitively, text output based, from that perspective, we are way above the level of a median human. And you've seen all of my visualizations on that. We were above the level of a median human with GPT-3, and I've gone on record for that. This is the MMLU score. We surpassed the human average in 2020 with GPT-3, and we're, I don't know if you can say double or triple, but we are double or triple the score of MMLU for the average human now with GPT-4. So scoring about 90 with Microsoft's calculations. There are more. I've got documentation of how it's hitting the ceiling on theory of mind, outperforming the SAT average, even across work. So BCG consultants, it's outperforming them in quality, about 60% higher than BCG consultants, according to Harvard, and even soft skills like empathy. That's not the one. It's close to that one. On the right-hand side there, ChatGPT, 9.8 times higher prevalence of empathetic and very empathetic ratings in response to patient questions. So, yes, cognitively, for text and language outputs, it has been a median human for the last 4 years since GPT-3, certainly since GPT-4. But I can't put GPT-4 in my house. I can't have it wipe down my benches. I can't have it assemble some furniture. I can't have it do a lot of the other things that a median human, like a 30-year-old woman from India, could do. I know that makes sense. Hopefully that clears it up, and you can go have more of a look at LifeArchitect.ai/AGI. Yes, DeepMind had definitions of AGI. There was some really weird politics going on about AGI definitions when GPT-4 came out. I just showed Microsoft's original title for their GPT-4 paper was First Sparks, or First Look at an AGI System. There were some politics there because Microsoft invests in OpenAI. OpenAI said Microsoft has exclusive access to the code for GPT-4 until we hit a particular threshold related to AGI. So Microsoft had to remove their paper title, change it to, don't even remember what it was. And then the Wikipedia definition, the Wikipedia article on AGI changed in the weeks that GPT-4 was announced. I found that to be very interesting. There were people tracking where those edits were made. Were they made from Silicon Valley? Were the politics related to commercials? All very, very interesting. I stand by the original definition that you just saw, a median human from a machine operating at the level of a median human. What else have we got here? We're just about to hit our hour. A lot of conversations about UBI. If you consider the concept of an abundance economy, particularly when we have humanoid robots or general robots doing anything and everything from energy generation to new resource discovery to manufacturing to construction to all of the professional services. So we essentially don't have to do anything and life doesn't cost anything. It opens up a completely new conversation. There's no poor and rich. There's no, I don't think everyone else deserves money because they didn't work for it, because the link between work and being alive has been disconnected. You don't have to work for a living. I won't talk too much about that. There are economists that mention that in different ways. You've got Andrew Yang talking about UBI a lot more eloquently, especially through governments, that is kind of interesting. And I know it's very difficult to think of a post-scarcity economy or an abundance economy, because we've lived our entire lives without that framework. We've lived inside the capitalism framework. You better go and do your 8 hours a day for 40 hours a week so that you can pay to have shelter. And if you don't sacrifice half of your waking life to make money for someone else, then you're not a good human, and you get relegated to the garbage pile. All of that thinking is going to change. I don't have to help with changing that thinking because AI will help with changing that thinking, but conduct a thought experiment with yourself. Have a look at your own beliefs and map it to what's happening in the world of artificial intelligence, because it really is a fascinating way that we have been brought up for the last many, many centuries, although the concept of work is a bit newer than we think. It's certainly recent compared to dinosaurs, if you like. And what does that actually mean now for us with AI coming around? Fantastic. Really exciting time in AI. It's just, I'm glad we did these weekly live streams. It's just a blast every time I wake up, because there's been something new, some new announcement in the LLM space where I sit day to day, but also in the text to video space. You just saw the V2A video to audio space. All of this is changing the way that we live and work and be. I'm very, very close to the public release of the mid-year report. Memo subscribers, full subscribers, have had it for a week or two now. We will release that video and the paper very shortly. It might be Saturday US time that we push that out. I appreciate you guys joining me for another hour of power and having a look at what's happening, particularly in the open source space, with Nvidia giving away the Nemotron-4 350 billion parameter trained on 9 trillion tokens model. It means you can go and use that for free right now. It means that your outputs will be different to everyone else using ChatGPT. And it means if you've got the cash or if you've got cloud access, you can run that yourself and you don't have to worry about your IP, your confidential data going walkabout, as well as any outages. And that makes it really, really interesting. It also just builds on everything that's been happening in the last few years. So consider the progress of models over the last 24 months or so here in our large language model highlights. And this is going to look so different in 6 months and in 12 months. So get ready for GPT-5 to be on there, for Claude 4 to be on there. I would love to see a Gemini Ultra 2 on there. Olympus coming very soon from Amazon. And I bet there are a few hundred stealth models or stealth AI labs doing stuff that we don't know about yet and then bursts into the limelight. Nemotron, the successor to Megatron. I'm pretty excited about this. Appreciate you guys joining me once again, and I'll see you soon.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Superintelligence is unfolding at lightning pace. Read my industry-grade analysis of AI that matters as it happens in plain English, the memo.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get the inside look as AI models are embodied into humanoids, AI's IQ increases to nearly perfect, and bleeding-edge use cases expand to the entire world.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Editions are sent to subscribers at Fortune 500s, major governments, and people like you. LifeArchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.